to make that a norm. Like, that is a norm that's been established. It's just absolutely ridiculous to me, that this is the times that we live in. But it's really, this is slavery in another sense. It's like you just got another system that looks different, but it's the same thing. You cut off people's tongue, you cut their tongue out, you cut their legs off, you cut their, they're working, but they're working to your glory, not to benefit themselves. So you're really cutting off their body parts. Yeah, so it's so what's to be done about this, and I don't know if our author is on the phone, Jacqueline Pitts, that wrote this book, Children of Wasafa, but I definitely would like for her to, be a part of this conversation. She was a corrections officer at Rikers Island in Queens, New York, 20 plus years, and was an assistant warden, I believe. And so she wrote this book, because what they say, and I don't know, so you can speak to this in terms of persons that are incarcerated. A lot of times it's because they say there's no father in the home. Or if there was a father in the home, there's some disconnect, there. And so do you think that fathers not being in the home has any drew a blank right there, has any impact on this whole incarceration business?
Sure. Well, I think statistics, when we look at statistics, I'm going to answer the question from a multiple prong, and I think Dr. Holder may have some additional research. So statistics show that generally those persons who have been incarcerated, that there has not been a father in the home. And I think what the cycle, if you will, is that what's created is that there's a loss of income that does not necessarily exist in other households. And so the additional stress that's placed on a mother to provide for children means that she has to be outside of the home and at times work additional hours, longer hours. And so as a result of that, you perhaps at times have children who don't necessarily receive the continuous guidance that some other households may have if you have two parents in the household. And so I think that in terms of supervision, in terms of, I think, whether it be their interaction with other peers in the neighborhood, because when you have another parent in the home, you're kind of aware of who the kids are in the neighborhood, kind of what decisions, what the value systems are of those families, and which might in turn influence children. Generally speaking, most people who are introduced to drugs or who participate in a crime is with someone that they know. And so I think that we see that there's a draw there. In addition to that, I would argue, and from what research shows us, is that in addition to that, the images of TV, of music, of media began to influence. So I think that there are some grounds there. Now, I would say personally, my mother was a single parent who raised my brothers and I, and neither one of us spent a day in jail. But we were blessed to have a village, if you will, who really were very deliberate, who got in our business, was curious about our every move. And so I think that it is possible but the reality is that even persons who have two parents in the home, my wife, who's a teacher, and one of the startling things that she discovered is that as people become more economically advanced, their jobs are more demanding. And so the same dynamic exists in many regards in two-parent households, as you see, because the parents are still absent from the home. So statistics show that, but I'm not sure how much research is being done to also show that we're seeing a similar dynamic and trend as well in two-parent households.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was thinking that today. Sure. A lot of focus is put on the single-parent home, right. And but the same thing could occur, when you have parents working and they're not there, and so the older sibling, someone is maybe in charge.
Sure.
Maybe, sometimes you're leaving children that are not really of the maturity.
Right.
And so the other siblings kind of, get out of hand. And so, I do think that we spend a lot of time, kind of on the fathers sure. not being absent, but it's equally important to see the other side of that. And what the author talks about in her book is that she has can I see this book? Yes. This is, title of this book is called The Children of Wasafa. And our author, Jacqueline Pitts out of Queens, New York, she was a corrections officer, as I said. And so she happens to be on the air. This is absolutely wonderful. Jacqueline Pitts, are you on the line? Jackie, are you on the line? Jackie? Okay, so she's on the title, on the front of the book. It says, "If you don't have a father, father yourself." Okay. Interesting statement.
Sure.
If you don't have a father, because there's so much put into the absent father, and I think that this has really been something relatively, probably over the past maybe 20 years, where there's been all this hype around, but fathers have been absent out of families.
Sure.
For a long time, right. So I think we put so much emphasis on that people feel as if there's, there is a void. But I think that there's become this, that affects people's self-esteem when you continue to highlight that. You continue to highlight, right. That and girls say, well, I don't know what a man should be, because my father was in my life, and they put a lot of energy into that. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as well in terms of, Dr. Hodo, your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that having a two-parent household is important. I think that within the Black community, we need to address that we have 7 out of 10 children born out of wedlock. I think that, I know statistically in the prison population, if a person's father or mother was in the system, in the criminal justice system, there's a 60% higher probability that they're going to follow in those footsteps. Ideally, I understand that things have changed and that maybe you don't necessarily have to have that mate in the household, but I think that they definitely need to be an active participant in their child's well-being. So that's something that needs to be addressed. It's okay if the parents didn't work out. I think it's better to be reared in a home with a single mother with lots of love and support from the father versus a two-parent household where the parents are not getting along and the children are seeing this.
Right.
But again, within the Black community, we've had several things that have definitely damaged our families.
Sure.
We've had the first, of course, being slavery, where people were sold, from their parents. We've had the second, would be the migration that we've seen when a lot of Blacks migrated from the South to the North and maybe didn't bring their significant other with them at that time, saying, well, I'll send for you when I get settled, and that maybe didn't happen. Another one was when people began to receive welfare, and at that point, you couldn't have a man in the house and receive benefits. So that definitely hurt our families. And then the fourth, I think, is this mass incarceration and this big disparity in the sentencing when it comes to crack cocaine, which we know with crack cocaine, the probability that it's going to be sold by a minority in a poor area is much higher than cocaine, which with cocaine, you're going to have 100 times more than someone is, in regards to crack, and you're going to get a substantial sentence. Right. So we've seen a lot of issues, but I guess the main thing is that the dynamics within the Black family have changed. And if you do have a parent who has been incarcerated, the probability of you following in those footsteps is relatively high.
Okay, Jackie, are you on the air?
No.
Yes, I am.
Good
evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to piggyback off on something you guys are talking about now. I was blessed to have a wonderful Black man in the home who was my father, my children, and my husband as well. And so often we hear all the negative things about our Black men, but I just want to give kudos out to my Black mighty man of God who stepped in when no one else would step in. He stepped up to the place, and he was a father indeed in raising my powerful Black man, who's a tall Black man of excellence. And I just want to say that this evening to encourage some Black man that's out there that's listening to know that we black women don't always have something negative to say about our black powerful men and our, what Sarah would call Lord. We could say our kings that's out there, to be encouraged, and that we're looking forward to you all stepping up to the plate and handling your business. So therefore, I just want to say and commend your panel as well, to thank you for being an instrument to the man of God in the middle. I honor God for you, and I pray that I have the opportunity to support you in the near future. Again, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
calling in, and she makes an interesting point that I think we spend so much time on the men that are not being fathers to their children,
Sure.
but don't give enough energy to those that do.
Right.
And I believe, this is just my belief, statistics may not support me, but I don't always think that who's doing statistics is the person that's they have an agenda, one.
Right.
So I believe that there's more positive going on in the world than there is negative.
Right.
I believe that there are more men being fathers to their children than there are not. I believe there's more mothers being mothers to than are not. Like, that's just my belief system.
Sure.
But as you talked about, some of this stuff is big business.
Right.
It is business to make families look like they're falling all apart. That's business.
Right.
So then it makes people feel inadequate. Like something must be wrong with my family, something must be wrong with me because they're saying so and so. Oh, so now I got a name to why I'm so screwed up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Versus it's like, but that's a skewed picture of the reality, that there's more to it than what meets the eye.
Yes. And I just wanted to echo, I want to thank the caller for calling in, and I want to as well challenge those men who have children to, obviously your son or daughters have friends, feel free to take them along as well. Take them under your arm. There's an old African adage, a cliche, a proverb rather, that said it takes a village to raise a child. And so I want to encourage you as you take your children to ball games or to Disney on Ice, just as you mentor and ask questions about career goals, to do the same with the children in your neighborhood. And I want to encourage, I think that that's a great way as well to highlight the positive persons that are in our communities, but to go back to that concept where each one reaches not just their own, but goes further outside their household.
Exactly. And so, Jackie, are you on the air now? Okay. So we having some technological difficulties, and we're having some technological difficulties. Okay, Jackie?
Yes.
All righty then. We finally got you on the air. We just, we're having some technological difficulties, but we are so glad that you are able to join us this evening. And so on the panel, we have Reverend Emery Berry, who's the pastor of a local church here, Fourth Baptist Church. And he's also heading up an initiative with mass incarceration. And then we have Dr. Tammy Hodo. And so we were
Good evening to Dr. Hodo, Pastor Berry.
Good evening.
And
Good evening.
the city of Richmond, Virginia.
Yes. So we were just talking, I was just telling them about the proverb that you have on your book, if you don't have a father yourself. And so we spent, some time talking about just whole idea, of incarceration, and that it's private business. And I explained that you were a person who worked in the correction system for a number of years and retired from that, and that you authored this book, that really talks about gangs, but that's really not the premise of the book. And so if you could just share with us a little about the book that you wrote, and then we can go from there.
Well, I wrote the book out of a concern for the communities of African descent. The future, out of concern over the future of these communities, because I think that so far we've been fairly successful in dealing with adversity. But over the past maybe 10 years or so, it has become increasingly evident that there is a breakdown amongst our young people to the point that they feel disconnected and are killing each other.
Yes.
And you know, if we look back at our history, we see that, of course, we overcame slavery. We still deal with